While in high school, what did your 10-year plan look like for your life?
Okay, so are these on? Are we done? No? Okay. I'll say, first of all, I wasn't a 10-year plan kind of girl. So I'm not sure that I had a 10-year plan, but I did plan to go to Western Kentucky University, study journalism, work for a newspaper. That is not what I have done at all. But I also had in me, from high school age, I really wanted to be a wife and mother. I love my children. I always had that in me, that I was hoping I could do that. In fact, when I was here at Thomas More, someone asked me, well, if you could do anything, what would you want to do in the future? It's like, well, I kind of like to get married and have kids. And I was laughed at, like, oh, you're intelligent, you're talented. Why would you want to do such a thing? Like, well, you know what? That's what God has put into me. And I'm grateful that I have no regrets. I have loved getting to do that. And I also love that, as you kept saying earlier, full circle. I'm also been able to do that and full circle back into publishing.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Brittany, Dr. Brittany, I'm going to ask you the same question.
So my 10-year plan, I thought I was going to go to the WNBA. Or marry somebody that was going to be in the NBA. At the time, I dated one of the basketball players. I was like, sure, we got it. So to be honest, honestly, all jokes aside, I really did not have a 10-year plan. I just, one of the things I thought about is when we're talking about high school is I really did. I wanted to go to the University of Tennessee. And I remember my school counselor saying that I would never get in. And I'm like, I have a 3.8. And so she really steered me a whole different direction with those little words of discouragement. And so I really was not sure. And I wish I could find her now and be like, wow, look at me now, right?
Right.
So my plan, I really did not have one. I knew that I was going to go to college, but I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And some days, even as somebody 41, you still don't know what your 10-year plan is, right? So, I didn't have a solid one, but,
And there might still be more added to that list of things to do, because we're still young yet. So, I thought I was going to be a computer programmer. I'm totally not, doing that. So, but I'm good. I'm good. You never really know what direction life is going to take you. So,
well, I'll say I did start an IT program. That way, I'm really good.
So at Thomas More University, like so many not-for-profits, the idea of service leadership is an important idea. We have many dedicated alumni who serve our community through their leadership on boards or committees. Was there something or someone during your time at Thomas More or another school that inspired you to lead by serving others?
Let me go first.
I feel like it's a different scenario. My family is very big on serving others. So my great-grandmother, she passed last year at 102. And I remember speaking at her funeral, and I remember as a child, grandmother, I call her grandma, she was not a very small woman, but I remember her walking barefoot up and down the street, giving people meals, serving people, and it's like, she doesn't have any shoes on, right? She did not drive, but she would make sure that when you started driving, that you were going to drive plates to other people's house. And for me, I just watched her serve people in the capacity of cooking a meal. And so now that's kind of been passed down to my mom and my grandmother. There's different ways that you can serve people, but every time somebody's in the hospital, there's a funeral. I call my mom and my aunt comfort care because they're always there for others. And so it was already always instilled in me to serve. And it may look different for me than my family, but I feel like that's what I grew up. That's the type of family. It's always you guys take care of other people no matter who they are.
Right, and always feeding people. I think my mom knew your grandmother.
I understand. Mine too. Well, very similar. And I have the unique experience that while I was at Thomas More, So my father found himself without employment when I was a senior in high school, ended up working here in the business office. My aunt was a professor here, told him about a job. My dad was a service leader from get-go, my mother too. So grew up seeing them always, they were a see a need, fill a need type people. Even, I do remember a time here at Thomas More, so part of what my dad did was kind of initiate renting out the facilities when students weren't here. So renting out the dorms for conferences. And he and my mom would be over there stripping beds, washing linens, remaking beds. And a fellow student saw them and was like, why is your dad making beds? It's like, well, because it needs to be done. Somebody's got to make the beds. And I really believe he had that just, if you need, somebody needs help, you jump in and do it. The service, the food is a big thing. It's my favorite work of mercy. The feed the hungry. And I saw that. Anyone who ever asked for anything in my household growing up, it was given, if it was within their power to do so.
Right, awesome. I noticed that we can't teach kids and can't mentor to kids that are hungry. So we always bring food to our programs because you never know what's going on in their home life. You know, so at some point food bonds us as well as music, but food is very important. I thank you for those answers. So we've all been through COVID. So at the end of the COVID pandemic, when it was officially announced, declared in May of last year, what's the lasting influence on your lives and culture? Can you speak to how the pandemic impacted how you came to think about our responsibility to others? Either way.
Yeah. So honestly, writing that cookbook was my COVID response. Okay. My friend and I had kind of jokingly before COVID taught, I thanked her. She invited us over and we received wonderful hospitality. I know Giovanna from church, didn't know her well. I sent her a thank you note saying your next book, she had written 2 prior books, should be about hospitality. We kind of went back and forth, yeah, we should do that, but not really seriously. After COVID, and we're seeing people who are afraid to engage with other people. I think it's not just a COVID, there's been a societal move towards screen relationships versus in-person relationships. But definitely the isolation of COVID impacted this, well, it just spread a lot of fear of being with other. And it did give me the courage. You know, we all use the talents we have. So Giovanna, excellent chef. I'm a good writer. The 2 of us together were like, let's help instruct people in a very simple way how to reach out and invite others into their lives. From those conversations come invitations to work at all the wonderful things that we've heard talked about today. But sometimes it starts with giving somebody that little nudge. You can do this. You know, here's how. Let's do this.
And I don't know if you know this, I'm sure everyone has. Hospitality has declined. It took a nosedive after, go through a drive-through. You can just go to any drive-through. I think Chick-fil-A might have an edge. I love to eat.
My pleasure.
I just go there for the hospitality. I've been through drive-thrus and I'm like, I feel like I'm, being the one offending someone for ordering. So hospitality is extremely important. Please keep spreading the word about hospitality.
I was going to say, this made me laugh. I think about Chick-fil-A because I was in the line and I had never been called queen at a Chick-fil-A. And I was like, oh man, that's really made my day.
Dr. Mention, how can you speak on how the pandemic impacted you, how you came to think about your responsibility to others?
So, on the pandemic, I'm very social, and I think I'm a comedian, and I'm not, but people do laugh. But one of the things is, I was really big on making sure that my family and friends felt connected. Making sure that, nobody felt alone, and so I'm like, let's have a Zoom birthday party. And we don't realize, it may sound silly, we don't realize that so many people were so lonely during that time. And for me, I live alone. And so, I know how to entertain myself. Like I said, I'm very social. I'll talk to anybody. But I knew that was not the same for everyone. And so building those connections, making sure people were fine. And I even started kind of with my students in class, because we were having class during this time. I would start like with a question of the day. Like, let's forget content for a minute. Let's ask, I want to know how you're doing. And we started to build a relationship, because I can't dive into talking to you about pedagogy and I don't even know like that you're okay being by yourself.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it opened up a door of opportunity for me to get into the work of DEI. There were a lot of things that happened during COVID, which brought up some things that I've always thought about, and I just was remembering, like, what more can I do? I'm sitting here and I may be teaching a class or two, but what can I do to bring some awareness and make an impact? And so really, I had time to sit and think and ponder, what more can I do with my life and how can I impact others? Because you had a lot of time to think during COVID, being by yourself. So
COVID didn't bother me too much. I'm an introvert.
I
People
know.
don't know that, but I can stay in the house as long as I got food and laptop, I'm good. So,
I agree.
but I noticed during the pandemic, trying to figure out the best way to serve has changed, because how we interacted before, the needs are greater, the needs are different. The technology is even different. So leading to my next question, an important part of becoming a servant leader is identifying a need and a community you feel passionate about serving. How do you find community, and what advice might you have for all of us here? How did you find your community, and what advice do you have?
I think for me, my community has already started like with church. But I've never limited myself to my community. So even here at Thomas More, I've met some amazing people, and we've built different communities, whether it's based on, education, whether it's based on burden loving, whether it's based on food, whatever the case may be. But I think the one thing is, a lot of us, we don't get outside of our comfort zone just by even speaking to people. You can literally learn so much about somebody if you literally just open your mouth and say hello. And my mom says it about me all the time. She's like, everybody talks to you. I was in Target, this lady gave me her full story, and I was just like, I'm just here to get my couple of items, right? But I think that starts community, because there are people that I'm friends with or that I bond with that I never thought that I would be able to. And I think it's because, I don't know, maybe I do have a friendly face sometimes, but I do try to go out my way to be kind to other people and work to, a lot of times my grandmother would say, you got a lot of your traits from me, and I'm like, I did. And my father is very outgoing. Like, he literally calls everybody his friend. I'm like, that's not your friend. They've never been to your house, so they're not your friend. We've never met them, they're not your friend, right? But I think a lot of times just building community in so many different ways, and it looks different with each group of people.
It does.
I may talk to certain people every day, but I may talk to certain people once a month, but that does not mean they're not still part of my community. And so I think it looks different for each and every person in different aspects.
And you might meet a stranger and then they become part of your community. So it's really, it brings us together in different ways.
Yep.
Jayne, I have the same question for you. How do you find your community, and what advice might you have for all of us?
I think it's a very organic type thing, and at the risk of sounding like a Dollar Tree mug, I think it's bloom where you're planted, right? Bloom where you're planted and put out runners. So, it's so true. So as we've both been saying, we've all been saying, like, our family, so important. And I think of the ways of service that I've developed throughout my life is because my parents took me along. And then you go and you meet other people and they share, well, I'm doing this. That sounds interesting. So some of it is, there are some innate interests and desires, and I mean, again, we've seen today different ways of service that people are very passionate about. So we do have a certain calling towards a different area of service, but I think it starts very generically, very bloom where you're planted.
Yes, exactly. And I was talking to someone about construction the other day, replicating some molding in a historical project we're working on, and it went from that to his whole group wanted to serve. I'm like, great, come on, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
So people understand there's a need for us to work together. There's a need for us to get things accomplished in our community, to recuperate what we lost and to grow. So Brittany, I have a question specifically for you. Your work, it helps people connect and bridge together across lines of differences. What helped you to become comfortable with helping folks work through the discomfort?
I think one thing is because
Your joke?
some of it, no, I think a lot of it is, I don't like to, I'm not tooting on, but I think one of the things is like personality-wise. I think I'm a very open person, and so I've never shunned people when they have questions or, you know, I have a very close friend in the audience, like the ask, can you touch my hair? And we laugh and we joke and we, and it's one of those things where say like you can't do certain things with everybody, right? And so I find myself being super, super open, and I think I make people comfortable, whether it's through a laugh, whether it's through a meal, whether it's whatever the case may be. And I think for me, I've been able to talk to people that I usually would not talk to or that would usually not talk to me. That's why I was late this morning. I was at a meeting and a principal kind of held me up and we had a very good 30-minute conversation as we were walking. And he said, the way you approach and how you do things, he said it made him comfortable. Right. And he was like, that's what we need. Yes. And so I like to think that my personality and just being open, because I don't think everybody does not know everything. So how are people going to learn if you don't have anybody to teach you, right? So if you've never had anybody say, don't say that to me or that's not appropriate, you can't assume that people already know things.
Right. So your openness and your warmth opens the door for conversation, connection. So. That's great.
You got to ask somebody.
Well, I just really just met you and I can see that. So yeah, you're right about that. So you've spent time serving and working with middle school children, college students, and adults working full-time. What are some of the interesting observations you have found when comparing these groups as it relates to your work?
I think that the one thing that's common for everybody is people generally want to know things. But they're also looking to people that are willing to help them get to know certain aspects. So for me, I do a lot of work, like I said, in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What I find even for like kids, adults, whoever, is people have never felt safe or in spaces where they can ask questions or be inquisitive. Mm-hmm. Because, and this can be in classrooms, this can be when you're trying to get to know somebody from a different background, that we do not create the space for people to be able to ask questions or to feel comfortable. And so that's the one thing that, you know, I've taught middle school, college, and I've worked with adult learners. And a lot of times when you're talking to people, they say, I've never felt like I could raise my hand or ask a question. And so for me, that's how, like, it's my responsibility to allow people those safe spaces that they've not been given. And so across the board, no matter the age or the level, it's how can we make sure that people's voices can be heard no matter who they are. And I find that those groups, that's what they have in common.
Awesome. Jayne, what has been your favorite part about writing The Holy Chow?
Well, it is a book to encourage relationships, and I would say developing a friendship with Giovanna. So again, we were acquaintances from church, but in taking on this project, spending time together, I got to know her more. We found that we have many things in common: love of serving people food, we also very different, and we kind of adopted the Martha Mary kind of, she's more outgoing, she's a more just jump in and do, and I ponder a little more. And I always thought I was a Martha because I like serving, I like throwing the party, but she way out Martha'd me. She is way out Martha. And I found that I did realize how much I do enjoy pondering. The other, so that's building a new relationship. I also have to give a shout out to my friend Wendy, who's here today, who was my fellow English major in '91. And at the end of the book, Wendy's an editor, and so we would call every day, and it was great. I got to talk to Wendy every day, and we just worked through, we love words. We talked about every bit of punctuation, every word choice. So new friendships and getting to spend time with a good old friend.
Awesome, awesome. So your book contains biblical meditations. Can you expand on that and tell me what those mean to you?
Well, I would say, again, it was a blessing to just kind of sit. English major, love stories, but to be able to kind of sit. I actually spent a lot of time in adoration, reading through and kind of contemplating in the quiet. It was a blessing to just take time, quietly ponder, and then think about how what I was reading helped me with the things that are kind of obstacles to me reaching out to others. It's scary, it's vulnerable. To reach out to somebody new puts you in a very vulnerable position. But like taking that quiet time and thinking, well, okay, I'm afraid of rejection. What if I invite somebody and they don't want to come? The Lord Jesus was rejected. Like in the story of the rich young man, they had everything in common. He said, come join me. He was rejected. So looking at things like, oh, my house isn't as nice as their house. I don't know. The Blessed Mother entertained 3 kings in a cave. It went well. So I loved spending that time relating what they went through and putting it into my experience and helping me over some of my fears.
Awesome, awesome. So we want to give the audience some time to ask questions. This is our Q&A session. So anyone just raise your hand and we will start by getting some feedback from you. Any questions?
I'll bring a mic too.
It's always hard after lunch, right? It's hard to teach after lunch. Everybody's kind of mellow.
You can tell us how the pandemic affected you and how you feel. Oh, there's a question right there.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Patricia Bourne. I'm an alum of Thomas More. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm also a coach and a trainer in corporate America. And Brittany, I just wanted to ask you briefly, what have you found to your approach with DEI and how accepting it is?
So it's a great question because I've done corporate training and small organizations and schools. And one of the things is when you first walk in the room, you can almost cut the tension with a knife because people, they hear the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they freeze up. And I find that it's because of the approach and how other people have come into the room. And so what I found is you can't go in blaming. You have to really set the space for people to feel comfortable. And I always walk in and I say, listen, and don't laugh at me. I just said this. I'm like, I'm not the angry black lady that's gonna come in here and give you a speech. I'm not. What I want to do is like welcome people to the conversation. And I don't think that's an approach that people have had. I've heard a lot of negativity when it comes to DEI, and it's because of the things that are said. You know, just this morning when I was in a meeting, the principal said to me, it's like, as a white male, I get tired of, or it's very difficult about white privilege, and he said he grew up poor, or, you know, about racism, and he's like, I'm this, but he says it's always been the approach. And he was asking this morning, what can we do? And so I think it's how people have come in the door when it pertains to DEI. we never look at the whole diversity wheel. We look at race, gender, and religion, when there is probably, 30 to 40 other things that make us who we are, including our hobbies. But we've concentrated on certain things, and that approach is really killing this whole notion of DEI and misinformation. So I hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
I had a question kind of for both of you. I'd like to hear both of your perspectives as a parent and as an educator. How you kind of encourage a spirit of taking on that responsibility for service in maybe somebody who doesn't have that intrinsic motivation to serve or to take responsibility for others.
I would say that as a home educator, again, it's very organic. They just come along. It's just a natural. It's who you are and what you do. So we're all going to Matthew 25. We're going. And generally, so I'm part of, again, extended community. It helps when the families and of their friends are also going along. So I would say finding what you're passionate about and for your children to encourage them, what you love, do it together and invite some other friends, because it's really nice when, you know, if you're unsure, is this just my parents forcing me to do something? Well, it must be kind of cool because the other families are doing it too. So we've been very blessed to have a wonderful group that we're all trying to raise children to service together. So.
I think the one thing as an educator and teaching future educators is making sure that our students particularly know that you will work with all types of students, and they will come to you with every type of background or issue that you can possibly think of. And so one of the questions sometimes we ask is, what really motivates you or gets you upset? And so if it's like homelessness, then that's an area where you can get involved. If you're upset that kids come to school hungry or without a coat or whatever, take that fire and that passion and serve in that capacity. In our family though, we kind of lead by example. And so the children in our family, they kind of get involved and really don't even know they're involved in service or that they're helping others. Just really fast, my cousin, he works with people, he has his own business, working with people with disabilities. And so his kids, from the age of 2 and his daughter's 5, she wants to help feed the young ladies that can't feed themselves. And she wants to push wheelchairs and she wants to help clean and do different things. And they don't realize that we've led, just by example, didn't force anybody to do anything. But I think the example that you said, and it's the same thing, I think, even in classrooms and things like that, if they see my teacher doing something, I'll follow. If I see my parents doing something, I'll follow. And I think it's an example. And I can speak to that because that's how my family has been.
And don't you find, children want to work for justice. It's very innate in them. And I think that, I can't think of a time when my kids actually didn't want to go along and do something. And you can make it fun. We have done a lot of the fundraiser type things. God bless my neighbors, but our kids stood on the street corner and played instruments not well and raised money for the local pregnancy center, and our dear neighbors supported them because they're good people. So, but they wanted to do something to help.
It's just like Nike, you just gotta go out there and just do it. You don't have to think about it, you can just keep it simple. Always keep it simple and just do it. And setting by the example is probably how we all got involved into what we do to serve. Setting an example, and always remember to invite someone. Because you never know what they're thinking. They may want to get involved, but they don't know how to approach you or, bring up the topic. Just ask. It's really easy to ask. Hey, you want to come along? And that's how it works. That's how it grows. Any other questions?
Hi, Assembly. My question is referring back to the DEI training, and I wanted to know because I'm a huge advocate in like exposure to different cultures and being more people involved, and I wanted to know how, and this is for everybody, how do you diversify your community, and do you feel that it's important to diversify your community?
I think it's super for me important to diversify your community, and there are many ways that you can do that. There's events, like I live in Cincinnati, so I feel like Cincinnati, there's always something going on. But if you can get outside of our comfort zones, like going to a festival of a different culture, or going to different, if somebody invites you somewhere to their religious service or whatever, I think those are some of the ways that, for me, that has helped me expand my community. Whether it's, you meet a coworker for coffee, and then from there, another coworker comes, and that's kind of how I've expanded my community, even here at Thomas More, where I have friends of all different backgrounds, church and things like that. But even outside of those things, it's really sometimes you meet one person, and then it continues to grow. But I think you have to be open to it. And it seems like you are, but everybody's not like that. But really integrating yourself in experiences is very, very helpful.
Exactly. My brothers in construction are Hispanic, white, like, it doesn't matter. They've adopted me. I'm a sister. If I call them and have a problem, I just gotta call them. They can give me whatever expert advice, and we're like family. I think one of the things that I found in low-income communities, only about 11% of those students graduate college. And for the most part, a lot of families are challenged. They haven't been outside of their community. They don't know what's there. They don't understand the opportunity. Even when you try to give a music scholarship and provide an opportunity for children to travel internationally, the families don't understand that opportunity, what that can grow into. So that's part of what we're trying to do, to educate, to teach, to comfort the family, because sometimes it's a scary situation and they may back away from it, but if you encourage them and show them this can happen, it's important. And when we have a lot of individuals that they get into situations, they don't know how to fight for themselves, they don't know the resources, and so that's where my booty coaching comes in, and I help them get out of things that they'd be stuck with a $40,000 car loan for a car that burned up in 3 days after leaving the dealership. So there's a lot of things, or even problems on their job. They don't know how to. They go to HR, but their situation hasn't been helped, and they're stressed, and they're great employees. So I get calls, all types of different calls. DEI is very important. It looks different from every family, every person, but it is important to have in our community and to keep supporting. Any other questions? We're gonna wrap it up. It's been great being here with everyone. Thank you so much.